Well, welcome to another episode of Views from the Bridge, your second favorite podcast about the Philadelphia Union, and maybe your second favorite team at this point. I'm not sure. Chuck, how you doing tonight?
I'm pretty good.
Good, good. Um, yeah, me too. I'm pretty good too. It's been a good week, but not soccer wise. But other than that, it's been a great week. So,
You said
um,
it's not fun to be winless in three straight games?
no, that's not fun. That's not fun. Yeah, so let's jump right in. I think my feeling about how to frame this episode is a little bit of what happens in New York can stay in New York because that seems to be what always happens when we go to New York. But I think the optics of it look worse when the club is $4 million richer and you still don't have 3 points.
Oh, yes. Um, yeah, no, I mean between that, the best chance of the game coming to Chris Donovan, more than half the shots against New York on a baseball field, but not the one they usually play on. Um, Most of those shots coming from outside the box. And then still the remaining questions of like, what exactly does Indiana Vasiliev do centrally? It's great.
So I think kind of going back, Evan and I recorded last week and the news was not finalized, although as we were recording, there was pictures being released of Daniel Gazdag in Columbus training gear on the field in Columbus, even though the trade had not been fully announced at the time. Coming out of that, Gazdag obviously gets traded to Columbus. Uh, the Union, to their credit, get $4 million out of it, which was more than what they brought Gazdag in for. So you can't complain about that too much. And then Gazdag throws some shots at the club for sure in his introductory press conference in Columbus, and then sort of came back on Instagram a couple days later with much more positive things to say about the Union and the fan base. Uh, I don't know. As you're thinking about the last week and the trade and Gazdag, any thoughts?
Yeah, so like I don't like the trade, but I do understand the need to make the trade, especially when like the longer um view of like him wanting a contract raise that the union weren't going to actually give him. And I mean, you can argue that like depending on what the number was that he was asking for, maybe he didn't deserve it either. Because like he is a great player, but he also is like 29, and the union were able to find a buyer who would still pay enough for them to get a $3 million profit on him after having him and him being a great part of the attack for so many years. So like that part and like actually doing the deal, like I don't have a problem with, but it's what you do next. And what we just saw against New York doesn't make it seem like they had a ready-made replacement for Gazdag in house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, More just like, oh, we need to extract some money for him, so we need to let him go now. And it makes sense that the crew would take him. Like he's gonna fit that team like a glove. And I mean, almost scored on his debut with them. But yeah, it's like it really is just all in the what's done next. And the transfer window is open still. So like they could theoretically use some of that money, but like if this is where they start to like lose some credit on being like relatively pragmatic this offseason if there's not a purchase to replace Gazdag in the attack.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I have a lot of thoughts as well, and I think it's one of the things I was thinking about. I guess is if we were sitting 10th in the East right now or 11th in the East, I don't think I'm as upset about this trade. I think it's like, all right, cool, we're not doing well, and we kind of assumed that this was going to be a rebuilding year and all of that. And so I'd go, okay, cool. You're continuing to move some pieces. Hopefully in July we'll, get enough pieces in that will uh, you know, hopefully over the summer we'll get enough pieces in that we can make a playoff run. Um, but that's just not where we're sitting. And so I think to a lot of folks' surprise, we were sitting in the top half of the East, and it seems like we were doing well. And it seems like if you could have kept, you could have kept Gazdag around. Obviously, that probably would have continued or probably will continue. And so I think there's that piece of it for me. And then the other piece of it for me feels like kind of a admission of lack of ambition out of the club. And I don't want to say it too loud, but I feel like, when Ernst Tanner comes out afterwards and says, yeah, we've got pieces in house and we feel good about it. And we obviously will reevaluate this summer of where we are. And it just feels like, all right, well, we didn't take the start of the season seriously to go, okay, we are doing fairly well and we are coming along. And so why don't we just keep running at it while we're there? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I understand. From what you said, I understand it. It's age, contract issues, all that kind of stuff. I understand the need to move him. I guess different scenario. I feel better about it. This scenario, I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's also just one of those things when the way that Ernst Tanner operates about just everything being business, that's fine if you're winning soccer games. If this team's not if they go on a run where like this 3 game winless streak becomes 5 or becomes 10, then it's like, what are you actually doing here? Because like even if you say we're playing Calvin Sullivan, we're no longer developing Calvin Sullivan for the Union. We're developing him for Manchester City. Not that he shouldn't play because of that, but like they already essentially have what his fee is going to be set. Like, even if he goes out and scores 10 goals this season, that's not going to change what you get from Calvin Sullivan from City. Um, and I mean, I'm not sure that realistically any of the other kids, like in attack, especially who play in central midfield, are actually ready. Um, so it really puts the team in a tough spot with the current formation that they've been playing of really like, what do you do? Even because like even a Gazdag with a diminished effect in this system is still better than an average MLS midfielder there. And like unfortunately, Indiana Vasiliev is just an average MLS midfielder.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because yeah, it is so weird to try to like figure out how to say this because I think like I don't think Daniel I don't think Gazdag is the perfect player to play the part of the system that Bradley Carnell is playing to like I don't think he's the perfect player to play that position. However, he is the best player the Union had to play that position. And so it's like, I think you want a little bit of a different uh profile of a player to play kind of that attacking midfielder role in this system, but the Union don't have it ready, and they also like Gazdag was the best person to play there. And so I think it's been interesting in the feedback since this trade has happened is people are like, well, it's so weird to say or it's so silly or it's so wrong to say that Gazdag didn't fit the system. And it's like for me, it's not wrong to say that. He doesn't fit the system. However, is he the best player that we had to play that position in that system? Yes, he was.
And also it's like this is when the question is like, should the player fit your system or should you build a system to fit the player? And like when that player like has done what Gazdag's done in attack for the Union, something that no one else on this team has done. Um, it is hard to say that like this system has to exist over him because like I would much rather be catering to him getting the ball in the box than like during that match, Jovan Lukic and Quinn Sullivan together took 5 shots from outside the box. Both of them can hit those once every 5 times, but like when they don't, it just looks bad. And during that game, it looked bad.
Yeah. And there's no reason when you've got guys like Baribo and Damiani that you should be taking a lot of shots outside the box. Like it's those guys are guys who they can fight for a ball in the box. They can get on the end of crosses. They can, all that kind of stuff. And so it shouldn't come down to, well, let's take 5 shots outside the box and that should be the way that we score. It's just not. And so you need players that can connect Lukic to Damiani or Baribo, and without Gazdag, do you have that player?
Well, you know who your best player at probably doing that is, right?
I don't know. You tell me.
Bedoya.
Yes, I'm fully aware of.
It's no, it's just when you come to like that unfortunate realization that again, person who should be seeing the field less is actually your next best player at doing that. It's just not great.
No. And I think like Bedoya, uh, if it's a 2 month stopgap, you know what I mean? Like if Bedoya is playing every game between now and June 15th, and in June 15th we buy a player who just finished their European season and can come in and make an effect, sure. I'm fine with Bedoya playing there for a while, as long as you're winning games. I could set the NYCFC result aside and go, you lose when you go to New York. So I could set that aside and go, okay. But if you lose at home this weekend against Atlanta, who obviously is not in a good form, gives up a ton of goals, all that kind of stuff, now I go, okay, we got to figure out what we're going
And
to do between now and June.
yeah, and then yeah, between and then ending April also at home to DC United. And if that game doesn't go how it should with the Union win, pitchforks will be out.
Yeah, for sure. And probably deservedly so.
Oh, absolutely. Like there are times when it's been like, no, like you're overreacting to like a good like um and there are like actually good things going on here. But yeah, just given the sentiment of everything that's happened and the fact that even with parts of that hot start, it was just like, is this sustainable? And we've already very clearly seen that the answer is no. But then you've also sold your best or second best player, depending on how you want to put it, with no replacement inbound. Um, and like, well, yes, I would have been happy to see this team finish like ninth and barely make it into the playoffs. Um, and I mean the start hasn't really changed that for me, but it also makes it much less likely that they even do that, considering the improvement of teams behind them in the table and the fact that some of those teams lurking outside of the playoff line, like NYCFC and Atlanta United, presumably can't be as bad as they are right now over the course of an entire season.
Yeah, I mean Atlanta, even to drive that home for this weekend. I mean, Atlanta has given up this tied for the second most goals given up on the season so far. They give up goals. They also can score them. They've scored 11 on the season. They've given up 13. And so you look at that and you go, okay, uh, you're facing a team with a good attack. But presumably our defense has improved, especially with Lukic
Yeah,
and Danley, all of that, and so you go, okay, we could probably keep them off the board, but you gotta score.
yeah,
and
and I mean you can definitely say that the Union's defense has improved, and kind of with the goal conceded to NYCFC, like you just throw your hands up. Like Endrick is a young goalkeeper. Like yes, he didn't necessarily need to come out for that, but also with some of the saves that he made, it would have been a worse result if he didn't make those. So like you just see your young keeper make a mistake and you score a goal to let them off the hook from that mistake, and that goal just never came. But like that's something that he's gonna learn from, and then next time he won't come out. Like that is where these players get experience, and like considering Andre Blake isn't getting any younger and any less injury prone, we're gonna see quite a bit of Andrew Rick.
yeah, and that's the reality of this sports and all that kind of stuff is players just get older and you've got to figure out how to replace them. I thought Rick played well, and I didn't, like you said, you can't sit there and blame him for the one goal he gave up. Like, you got to kind of look at the team on the whole then and say, well, where's your one coming from? Like, you got to put one behind them then too. And they just didn't do that either. And so you kind of go, I don't know. It's not really Rick's fault at that point. It's the fact that you couldn't even score one against a team who's not in great shape in NYCFC. Yeah.
Nope, I mean that really is about it for that game.
So moving forward, the Union play Atlanta United this weekend. Um, I don't know. Any thoughts going into this game?
uh, I would like to see multiple goals. We haven't seen that in a while. Um, Actually, it's been, yeah, 5 straight games of one goal or no goals scored by the Union, and like I think Atlanta United has what they've given up like two or more in like every game except their last two, and that's only because they've played like two of the worst attacks in MLS in their last two, in FC Dallas and the New England Revolution. So like if the Union are as good of an attack as we like to think that they are, they should score goals in this game. And that's like really where like concern starts growing. I don't know if they're gonna beat Atlanta United. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it's like some kind of wacky 3-3 draw, because that's just the kind of games they play. Um but like the Union have to score multiple goals in this game for me to really have any kind of confidence that they can actually do that.
Yeah. Do you think there's some element of uh Damiani's like pushing for something?
That's I do wonder that, but that's also where I was hoping that since he came off the bench and immediately got his first Union goal, that wasn't going to end up happening. Um, and I feel like in some senses, like I'm more worried about Tyberibo than I am about Damiani. Just because we've seen historically Baribo go on these streaks where he just scores everything that's in front of him, and then he scores nothing. So like if you're going based on performances, this would be a good time to like bench Baribo and bring him on at 60. Um, I don't think that that's actually going to happen, but like I think this is good of a time as any to try and shake things up a little.
Yeah, and I mean, like you guys talked about the other week, like, yeah, you start Baribo and Damiani together, and do you in this game go with Ure and Damiani and see like what happens there, and if they can create something together, and it's just like, do you just keep trying to shake things up until you find something that works for a little while? Because it doesn't seem like the last couple game anything particularly is working. So it's like, do you do something different and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see, yeah, I don't see what else you can you can really do other than that.
You don't want to see a Chris Donovan start?
I mean, I feel like we're not far off from that, and that's what's like concerning because even if you look at the subs that like Carnell's not making, like Calvin Sullivan's barely getting into games, Jesus Bueno's barely getting into games, Raffanella's barely getting into games, and then like I guess we can say Neil Pierre's here, but like, is he? It's like it is clear that he has the guys that he trusts, and it's funny because look, it's the same guys Jim Curtin trusted. Like this isn't necessarily a Jim Curtin just wasn't playing the kids. Like they do just need time to be ready, unless you just want this team to be bad. Um, and yeah, outside of figuring out if you have combinations among those like first 15 players that can work, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what else you do unless you officially punt the season, which would at least just say that we do have a direction. It's not a fun one, but we have a direction.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like I said, I think sort of what you said there of like Calvin not getting minutes doesn't surprise me a ton. It doesn't surprise me a ton. He's getting a lot of Sunday and Monday minutes with Union too, but he's, which is fine. He's getting minutes that way. And I think that's probably where his most effective minutes are going to come anyway. Um, but then you just wonder like what's happening with the first team. And, it's not Bueno's not a surprise to me. Lukic and Jean Jacques are definitely like the better defensive midfielders, holding midfielders, midfielders playing a little bit deeper. You would like to see Bueno get a few more minutes, and you would assume closer to the summer once we have a couple, we've got a couple Wednesday games coming up, and you would assume like once those Wednesday games come up that Bueno would probably get a few starts here and there. Um, but it is like you don't, if it is nice to have three strikers in the fact that you do have, it, at any time you have a Ure or you have a Bariba or you have a Damiani to pull off the bench before you pull off before you pull Chris Donovan off the bench. But on the other hand, like other than that, you don't have a whole lot of effective players or players that are going to make a big difference in the game coming off the
Yeah,
bench.
and well, and also even with like Glavinovic going down to an injury, you basically lose your ability to play a back three.
Yes. Yes. Unless you want Nate Harriel to be your other center back, and I'm not sure anybody wants that.
I mean, that's not a bad thing, but I'm also just worried about like pushing Frankie Westfield too hard because like it feels like he's running into a bit of a wall of his own.
Yeah, and that is what's hard about some of these young players playing as many minutes as they are, is they just don't have the fitness and the recovery skills and all of that they need to continue to play all the minutes that they're playing. And so you need a Kai Wagner healthy, and then, you know, and you need an effective Harriel, and you need an effective Bizo, and you just don't have that right now.
It took longer than I expected for us to have this conversation.
Yeah, it
So, I
did.
mean, I'll at least give the union credit there. Um, let's just hope it doesn't become a weekly conversation.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm hoping they get a win this weekend, and then we can go back to, all right, how do they get a win against DC? Rather than talking about, oh man, this team's the optics on this team. And I think that's what it is right now for me. Like I look at it and go, okay, the optics are not good. The reality is not bad. You as historically, there's not many people who go into New York and get wins there, playing on a baseball field and all that stuff. But like it's just not it's so I'm not too depressed about that, but it's just not good because of the
Yeah.
trade.
And even like on paper, this March into April stretch was always going to be a tough one. So, like, it's not a surprise that any of this happened outside of the trade. Um, but, like, this next stretch of games is a lot nicer. Games that should include wins with Atlanta, DC United, and Montreal.
Yes. Yes. And hopefully we'll be talking about a few wins over the next couple of weeks. All right, before we get out of here, any predictions for this weekend?
I'm still going to keep the 3-3 draw.
3-3 draw. Oh geez.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Everyone's going to have
I
a heart attack.
I know. Uh I'm gonna say, I don't know, just to keep it interesting, I'm gonna say 3-1 Union. I think they get going this weekend. Strikers get back in form and score some goals. And maybe it's time for a Jean-Jacques banger. We got the Lukic banger, twice already this season. Can we get a Jean-Jacques shot from 25 that shakes the net?
I mean, we have had some highlight reel moments against Brad Guzan, so maybe.
All right, well, that's what we think. Let us know what you think, and we'll talk to you again next week, and hopefully we'll be talking about a Union win.